Look around. There are more than 50 armed conflicts being waged across the world, an incalculable number of hate crimes, and an overwhelming amount of hate speech. Over 60 million refugees have fled the terrors of war to neighboring countries, in an ongoing human tragedy that shows no signs of abating. Physicians for Social Responsibility, a Nobel Peace Prize-winning organization, estimates that in just the last few years, 5 countries have been destroyed by conflict. Peaceful members of ethnic and cultural groups are ridiculed and persecuted for simply being who they are. Religion is often blamed. And yes, religion has played a role in creating these conflicts. Extremists everywhere have distorted its teachings to justify their acts of terror. The media, professors, and powerful individuals often suggest that religion is the villain. But religion and faith are also leading a movement to resolve these conflicts. Humanity's ability to be compassionate and loving is greatly underestimated, and these attributes are strengthened by religious values across the world. By focusing our efforts on the positive side of human nature, our compassion and selflessness, we can begin to bring these conflicts to an end. It is the part of our nature that searches for justice and peace among those who would otherwise be our foes, that protects those who cannot protect themselves, and will not stand idle and watch what we love die. It is the part of our nature that seeks the truth and recognizes that religion can bring us closer to what we all strive and yearn for: a more just and peaceful world. Look around. Around you today are some of the smartest and most compassionate people in the world. Together, we can create a more just and peaceful world.
Salam, shalom, and peace. Good evening and welcome to tonight's plenary session, focused on war, violence, and hate speech. My name is Suzanne Barakat, and as an American Muslim who had 3 family members murdered in cold blood this February, I've experienced firsthand the devastation of hatred and violence. Tonight, we have the privilege of hearing from the world's leading lights, people whose lifelong commitments to justice and peace against a backdrop of perpetual war have mobilized millions. Each of us has borne witness, through the filters of media or our own experiences, to war, violence, and dehumanization. And yet, we're here tonight, together representing different extractions, persuasions, and faith traditions, bonded by the shared belief that it need not be this way. Our distinguished guests have dedicated themselves fully to proving as much, and as all of you, I'm honored to be here and humbled to be introducing them. But first, we'll open with a performance that draws upon the primary feature of all of the spiritual traditions reflected here today, a call for peace. Emma's Revolution is the award-winning peace and justice songwriting duo whose songs have been praised by Pete Seeger and sung for the Dalai Lama. Based in the United States, Emma's Revolution songs are sung in communities of faith and at peace and justice events around the world. Joining Emma's Revolution for this special performance is percussionist extraordinaire Robin Bertelis and singing ambassadors for peace from the renowned Utah-based Up With Kids Musical Theater Academy, directed by Shauna Livingston. Please welcome Emma's Revolution and Up With Kids.
Thank you so much. I'm Pat Humphreys. This is Sandy O and Robert Vidulis. We're at Emma's Revolution. Sandy and I wrote this song after September 11th, and we sang it. We were asked to sing it at the first peace rally in New York City after September 11th, but they asked everyone to wear white. But we saw how quickly the messages of war started to be distributed through the community. So instead of just wearing white, we wrote these words: Salam, peace in Arabic; Shalom, peace in Hebrew; and peace in English. And we sang that song in the streets of New York with 10,000 people. And since that time, the song has traveled around the world, and so have these shirts. And the song made it to a young military chaplain from Community of Christ in the Helmand province in the south of Afghanistan, where he would play a beautiful video that they made to the song at his services there. This was the most dangerous forward operating base in Afghanistan. And at a certain point in time, it was too dangerous for them to stay, and they had to leave. But Seth Bryant felt that it was important in that war-torn valley that these three words be the last words to echo through above the Sangin River: peace, salam, shalom. Please sing with us. Peace, salam, shalom. Peace, salam, shalom. Peace, salam, shalom. Peace, salam, shalom. That's your part. Peace, salam, shalom. 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 Nous poursuivons la paix. Peace, salam, shalom. Nous poursuivons la paix. Salam, shalom. Nous poursuivons la paix. Salam, shalom. Nous poursuivons la paix. Salam, shalom. We believe in peace. 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 Salam, shalom. Creemos en la paz. Creemos en la paz. Creemos en la paz. Creemos en la paz. Salam, shalom. We will work for peace. 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 Salam, shalom. Obramos por la paz. Obramos por la paz. Obramos por la paz. Obramos por la paz. Salam, shalom. Nous œuvrons pour la paix. 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 Salam, shalom. Vivimos en la paz. Vivimos en la paz. Vivimos en la paz. Vivimos en la paz. Salam, shalom. Nous vivons dans la paix. Nous vivons dans la paix. Nous vivons dans la paix.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you, Emma's Revolution and Up With Kids. You can visit Emma's Revolution at booth number 361 in the exhibit hall and hear them tomorrow at 1 p.m. at the gathering stage. Now, next, here to offer a prayer in the Buddhist tradition, please welcome Taylor Hirano.
Hello, my name is Taylor Hirano, and I'd like to share with you this Buddhist prayer on loving kindness from the Metta Sutra. May all beings be happy and well. May no harm or difficulties come to them. May they live in peace and harmony. May I be happy and well. May no harm or difficulties come to me. May I live in peace and harmony. May my family be happy and well. May no harm or difficulties come to them. May they live in peace and harmony. May my teachers be happy and well. May no harm or difficulties come to them. May they live in peace and harmony. May my friends be happy and well. May no harm or difficulties come to them. May they live in peace and harmony. May strangers be happy and well. May no harm or difficulties come to them. May they live in peace and harmony. May my enemies be happy and well. May no harm or difficulties come to them. May they live in peace and harmony. May all beings be happy and well. May no harm or difficulties come to them. May they live in peace and harmony. Namo Damatsu. Namo Damatsu. Namo Damatsu. Thank you.
Thank you, Taylor. Next, we have His Holiness Dr. Vasanth Vijayji Maharaj. He is an esteemed spiritual Jain guru and an inspiring teacher who has transformed millions of lives towards creating a peaceful world through peace marches, concerts, candlelight vigils, medical camps, essay and art contests, and more. His vision and philosophy seek to provide practical solutions to burning issues around the world. Tonight, he will be here to present the Ahimsa Award. Please welcome His Holiness.
You to talk about the award first.
Now,
Award.
first.
Award.
Om. This is the first time that the Ahimsa Award is being presented at the Parliament of the World's Religions, sponsored by Jaina and Jain communities around the world. The Ahimsa Award is going to the Charter of Compassion.
Your Holiness, it is with the greatest of thanksgiving that I say to you on behalf of the 3 million people in the world who have now signed the Charter of Compassion, we give you our deepest thank you for honoring us in that way. Blessings.
Thank you.
Maybe बाद में बोलना है.
Congratulations on the award. Let's give Joan Brown Campbell another round of applause. Next, we have Allan Boesak. Allan is a South African Dutch Reformed church cleric and politician and anti-apartheid activist. One of the heroes of the anti-apartheid freedom struggle in South Africa and co-leader with Archbishop Desmond Tutu. He articulated an expression, radical reconciliation, that draws upon the legacy of Jesus and calls for us to not just talk of reconciliation, but restore justice and change the structural roots of injustice. Please welcome Allan Boesak.
Do we realize that something is wrong in a world where there are so many farm workers without land, so many families without a home, so many laborers without rights, so many persons whose dignity is not respected? Do we realize that something is wrong when so many senseless wars are being fought and acts of fratricidal violence are taking place on our very doorstep? Do we realize something is wrong when the soil, water, air, and living creatures of our world are under constant threat? So let us not be afraid to say it. Of the many wise words from Pope Francis this year, these words I find most inspiring. They are a challenge to people of faith everywhere. Over the years, I have been to too many meetings with religious leaders, have had far too many discussions, taken too many resolutions, have signed too many petitions, not to know that we, as we are gathered here tonight, do know very well that something is wrong. And it is more wrong now than it was 10 or 20 years ago. The time has come for us not to be afraid to say it. And I'm not talking about mentioning the wrongs that we see. I'm talking about how we say it, with faithfulness to those who suffer, with truth, with courage, and with compassion. The wrongs we see are not just happening, they are made to happen. And they are happening to the vast majority of God's children walking this earth. They are not happening randomly, they are deeply systemic, deliberately built into systems of oppression, domination, and dehumanization, and we must not be afraid to say it. These words mean that the Pope knows that because the perpetrators of these wrongs are powerful and rich and privileged, we sometimes speak a language guaranteed not to give offense. We speak a language couched in such caution, such ambiguity, such fear, that it becomes almost meaningless. The comfortable are not afflicted by it, and the afflicted are not comforted by it. We must not only break the silence, we must speak a different language. Our language must be a courageous, liberating, transformative, healing language, a counter language to the language of distortion and perversion, of hate and violence, discrimination and dehumanization, of sanctimonious neutrality. It must be a language counter to the language of preemptive legitimation and post facto justification. We must be much more alert in our awareness of the fact that our global reality is an imperial reality. And we must be much more vigorous in our testimony and work against violence in all its forms. Empires, Walter Wink has reminded us, create not only the myth of domination, they also create the myth of redemptive violence. Instead of acknowledging the violence it uses because it is needed for continued domination and subjugation, the empire enshrines the belief that violence saves, that war brings peace, and that might makes right. Consequently, violence is not only necessary, they make us believe it's the only thing that works. If God is what one turns to when all else fails, Walter Wink says, violence certainly functions as a god. It demands from its devotees an absolute obedience unto death. It, and not any of the religions we proclaim, is the dominant religion of our societies today. Over against, but we also know the deadly logic of the endless wars inflicted on millions of people, and this is the logic. Perpetual war that breeds perpetual suffering and perpetual death, perpetual impoverishment, perpetual profits, perpetual enrichment. This is wrong, and we must not be afraid to say it. Over against the violent language of suppression and exclusion, we must speak the language of love and inclusion. But for the person of faith, the scourge of inclusion is inflicted upon all who are oppressed, exploited, and robbed of their dignity. Globally, 1 in 3 women will experience physical and or sexual violence by a partner or non-partner. For the Americas, it is 29.8%. For Europe, 25.4%. The Eastern Mediterranean, 37%. And Africa, 36.6%. Violence against women is a global health problem of epidemic proportions, says the World Health Organization, and we must not be afraid to say it. For us to be credible witnesses of our faith and of our belief in peace and justice and dignity for everyone, we must stand where God stands. And because God is a God of justice, compassionate, inclusive, indivisible justice, unless justice rolls down like waters and righteousness like a mighty stream for the battered, oppressed, silenced, exploited, and excluded women, it will not roll down for the economically excluded poor, the landless farmers, or the penniless unemployed, and we must not be afraid to say it. The brutal exclusion of LGBTI persons, the assault upon their dignity as children of God, made in the image of God, the daily threats to their very lives, is one of the most devastating forms of violence we are seeing today. And we must not be afraid to say it. We must guard against a religiosity that is ideological, neo-colonialist, a toxic mix of scriptural selectivity, violent homophobia, and unrelieved patriarchal power, and we must not be afraid to say it. We know, and we have seen this too often in our history, that behind the carefully calculated hatred, the deliberate dehumanization, the calculated demonization, and the callous exclusion of the other lies the temptation of the deification of the self. And behind all self-deification lurks the necessity of the annihilation of the other. And we must not be afraid to say it. But now that we know this, we must also know that Dietrich Bonhoeffer has reminded us that the time for pious words is over. So let me ask you one more deeper question. Where are your wounds? My fellow countryman, Allan Payton, wrote a book in which he tells the story of a very cautious school principal in the days of the Soweto uprisings in 1976. Always afraid not to be seen with the children. But one day they saw him marching with the children, and the other day they saw him on the stage speaking on behalf of the children and behalf of the cause of freedom. And his friends said to him, "What has happened to you?" And he said this: "I thought about it, and I know that one day when I die, I will appear before the great judge in heaven, and the judge will ask me, 'Where are your wounds?' And if I say I have no wounds, he will say to me, 'Was there then nothing to fight for?' So tonight, that is the question I am asking you. Where are your wounds? When we see the pain and the suffering and the misery and everything that our people across the world must suffer, where are your wounds? And if you have no wounds, was there then nothing to fight for?" So when we leave here and the speaking is done, the resolutions are taken, the petitions are signed, and you go back to home to face the misery, the dehumanization, the suffering, and the pain. And when you see the hope in the eyes of children and women and men who look to us for truth, compassion, and faithfulness, the question is not how well we have spoken in this place. The question is, where are your wounds? And if you do not have any, was there then nothing to fight for? Thank you for listening. God bless you.
Thank you for that wonderful speech. Next we have Medea Benjamin. It's okay. Medea Benjamin has been a leading advocate for social justice for over 30 years. She is a co-founder of both Code Pink and the international human rights organization Global Exchange, and has advocated for social justice for over 30 years. Code Pink was founded after 9/11, at the onset of the invasion of Iraq. It is a grassroots organization working to end US-funded wars and occupations, to challenge militarism globally, and to redirect our resources into healthcare, education, green jobs, and other life-affirming activities. Please help me in welcoming Medea Benjamin.
I just want to start by acknowledging that I was in the extraordinary panel that Suzanne was on today, and it moved me to tears to hear your story about the discrimination, the fear, the hatred that you encountered on a small journey from San Francisco to come to Salt Lake City. So I want to say how it inspired me to do more to counter Islamophobia. Thank you for sharing. As a Jew, my people too have faced tremendous discrimination with a horrendous Holocaust and anti-Semitism that continues to this day. And that's all the more reason for me as a Jew, those of us here who are Jews, to be sensitized to the discrimination that others face and to embrace the movements like the Black Lives Matter movement right now, started by 3 queer women, that has taken this nation by storm and put the light on a system that has taken the Black community, and particularly the young community, to say we refuse to be stopped and frisked and beaten and dragged and choked and riddled with bullets by the very people who are supposed to protect us, that we refuse to be thrown into a prison system that is a for-profit system that has made us fodder in their industrial prison complex. It's all the more reason for us to be in solidarity with the immigrant community, particularly the undocumented immigrants who are putting their lives on the line to stop this inhumane system that is ripping families apart and throwing them into detention centers, to say no to for-profit detention centers. And speaking of prison systems, let's look at Guantanamo, still open after 14 years, where prisoners who have been cleared for release years ago are still languishing in that prison. Let's demand the closure of Guantanamo and to give Guantanamo back to the Cuban people. Just like we should give back the over 800 bases we have in other people's country and use our military to defend us here at home. Our hearts should go out to the millions of Syrian and Iraqi refugees and say that instead of spending trillions of dollars on weapons, on US troops, on drones, on weapons of destruction, we should put that money into trying to deal with the humanitarian crisis that our invasion of Iraq has unleashed. We should demand that our government stop selling weapons to repressive regimes like Saudi Arabia, like Egypt, like Bahrain. And we should take a moment to think about what's happening right now in Israel and Palestine. Our hearts go out to the Israelis who have been stabbed, who live in fear, but let us recognize the underlying reasons that there is so much violence in that part of the world, and that is the occupation, the daily humiliations that the Palestinians have to live with, the settlements, the destruction of their homes, of their olive orchards, the invasion of Gaza time and time again. Let us demand justice for the Palestinian people. Let us demand justice for the LGBTQ community, including the trans community, from Iran to Uganda, to Jamaica, to Middle America, where people are murdered for who they are and who they love. I want to end with a lesson that I learned on my first trip to Iraq under the brutal regime of Saddam Hussein. When I got to the border and handed in my passport to the border guard, and he looked at it and he said, "Benjamin, isn't that Jewish?" and he disappeared. I waited and waited and waited, thinking I would be thrown in some horrendous dungeon. And instead he came back huffing and puffing and said, "I brought my notebook. I'm studying Hebrew. Could you correct my grammar?" He said when his nation went to war with Iran, he studied Farsi, and now that they were fighting with Israel, he wanted to learn history. He said, "We should learn to communicate with those we are told are our enemies, because there should be no people who are our enemies." This is a lesson he could teach Hillary Clinton, who at the last debates, when she was asked, "Who are you proud of to have as an enemy?" she said, "The Iranians." Proud to have the Iranians as an enemy. The correct answer is we don't want anybody to be our enemy. Our job is a simple one. Our job is to humanize the other. Our job is to counter hate. Our job is to spread what Martin Luther King called unconditional love, power to the peaceful. Thank you.
Thank you, Medea. How's the crowd doing tonight? Excellent. Next, I have the honor of introducing Dr. John Esposito. Yes, wow. Dr. Esposito is an author and university professor of religion, international affairs, and Islamic studies, and the founding director of the Prince Al-Walid bin Talal Center for Muslim-Christian Understanding at Georgetown University. A leading expert in the field of Islamic studies, Dr. Esposito has published over a dozen books on the subject, including the upcoming book, Islam and the Democracy After the Arab Spring, which examines the state of democracy in Muslim-majority societies today. Beyond his role as an academic, Dr. Esposito plays a leading role in many organizations whose goals include interreligious dialogue and understanding. Dr. John Esposito.
First, let me apologize. Since we only have 7 minutes, I usually announce that we're going to serve you breakfast because I usually go for 7 hours, having been trained by Gaddafi and Castro. I want to talk tonight about how Islamophobia is harming America. Hate has become the new normal in America, as in Europe. Today, Islamophobia is a metastasizing social cancer that threatens the very fabric of America and the religious freedom, security, and civil liberties of American Muslims. The recent Global Rally for Humanity last weekend is an example, targeting 20 U.S. cities, calling upon people to bring their weapons for an anti-mosque, pro-America rally. Rather than exercising free speech and exercise in their free speech, as one could see, this is an extremist anti-government movement, but it's not new. If you think back to the attacks in Garland, Texas, when you had the cartoon situation, and then you had 2 outside extremists that came in only 2 months before or 3 months before. Malik al-Mujahid and I were speaking there at a Muslim fundraiser, and before you knew it, when it got picked up on social media and on Fox, we suddenly had police, SWAT teams, a helicopter, FBI, and hundreds of people coming from different parts of America, some talking about bringing their weapons loaded and unloading them when they got there. This, regrettably, is where we have come in America. Where does this hate come from? Who are the enablers of Islamophobia? Leaders shape the interpretation of events and lead people. Political candidates and elected officials have a major role to play in terms of these attitudes and behaviors. In fact, polling data shows that usually when we have American elections, there's an enormous uptick in Islamophobia. So it's not merely when there's a radical event. For example, after the Boston bombings, you've not had the uptick that we have now with the presidential debates. One need only listen to the candidates to realize why that's the case. More recently, we had Republican presidential candidates like Trump and Carson, also Rick Santorum, who've gone in a similar path. Ever since Carson on September 20th said that he didn't think a Muslim could be president under our Constitution, was told that under the Constitution what he said, it violates the Constitution, and did not back off. The reality of it is the donations went up, the numbers go up. As a young Republican said to me when Peter King was holding his hearings, he said, the reason why he does it, and if you watch after the hearings, it will be that the numbers of donations go up. And that's where we are, and that's what has to be counted. North Carolina's Republican primary voters, there was a September poll, 72% believed a Muslim could not be president. 40% also were more likely to say that Islam should be illegal. And how about our religious leaders? John Hagee, Rod Parsley, who were supporters of Mr. McCain, Pat Robertson, Franklin Graham. What are the things that they say? Muhammad is a pedophile, Islam is an evil religion, and they get the platform and they have their followers. We have to remember that in the United States, there is a significant minority that are the people who provoke hate crimes and hate speech. But at the end of my talk, I'm going to point out that there's another majority that's even more of an issue. What are the causes? Mass media, social media. Media Tenor did a study of 2001 to 2011, 975,000 pieces of media from major European and American sites. 2001, when you looked at coverage of the world, 2% was devoted to Islamic extremism, 0.1% to mainstream ordinary Muslims. 2011, 2% jumps to 25%. Mainstream remains at 0.1%. That is a statistic that we can't tolerate, but it's a statistic that continues to grow. If we take a look at social media, studies have shown, using IRS returns, that more than $180 million has been tracked from philanthropy supporting major anti-Islam and anti-Muslim websites. Yet, despite these facts, it doesn't jive with who Muslims are. Educationally, economically, religiously, we know that they are integrated from hard data as well as major polls. We know that they are increasingly politically integrated. Yet today, a majority of Americans believe that anti-Muslim discrimination is real. What's our challenge? Number one, deconstruction. We have to deconstruct all of the Islamophobic rhetoric that's out there. But more importantly, reconstruction. We have to emphasize protecting pluralism and ending Islamophobia, which is basically what the Bridge Initiative at our center at Georgetown has moved to bring into play. I think it's important to notice that today we need Muslims and non-Muslim Americans alike to call upon elected officials to defend American pluralism. We need a greater involvement of interfaith groups. When that happens, groups like the Global Rally fizz out, which happened. But keep this in mind. The Southern Poverty Law Center, only 2 years ago, and the FBI report this year affirmed that the major threat, the number one threat to safety and security in America are anti-government, white supremacist groups, not domestic Muslim extremists. Where do you see that in the media? The most important thing I leave you with today is the following. Islamophobia, like anti-Semitism, racism, and xenophobia, which parenthetically are all growing here and in Europe, threatens us all. This social cancer, with its fear-mongering, hate, requires the response and support of all who believe in fundamental rights, freedoms, and equal treatment under the law. And all who are concerned about if we don't have that, watching Islamophobia as it has drive the foreign policy of the United States and the EU. Thank you.
Thank you. What I didn't mention in the intro but may have come out through the speech is that Dr. Esposito was born and raised in Brooklyn. Our next speaker, also an expert in Islamic studies, was born in Geneva, Switzerland. Dr. Tariq Ramadan is a professor of contemporary Islamic studies at Oxford University and also teaches at the Oxford Faculty of Theology. Through his writings and lectures, Dr. Ramadan has contributed to the debate on the issues of Muslims in the West and Islamic revival in the Muslim world. He is active at academic and grassroots levels, lecturing extensively throughout the world on theology, ethics, social justice, ecology, and interfaith, as well as intercultural dialogue. He was elected by Time magazine in 2004 as one of the 100 most influential people in the world, and by Foreign Policy magazine as one of the top 100 global thinkers. Please help me in welcoming Dr. Tariq Ramadan.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. In the name of God, the most compassionate, the most merciful, can I ask you something for 10 minutes? I know you like clapping. I'm asking you for 10 minutes not to clap. And if, no. If you like what you hear, you do exactly what you do when you are reading a book and you like what you are reading, you just think about it. Clapping, it's to be emotionally driven. And when we speak about peace, we have to be spiritually, intellectually, rationally driven. We have to take peace seriously. And when we speak about peace, it takes effort. It's not a given. Peace is a goal. And when it comes to inner peace, we all know this. You can't get inner peace if you are not disciplined, if you are not striving to get this inner peace. And it's exactly the same when we speak about collective peace, social peace. It takes effort, and this is something which is the starting point of our discussion here. It's to start with the conditions of peace. And as I'm talking about discipline, one of the most important things that every one of us in her or his personal life, within our families, within our communities, within our societies, within our countries, we need to deal with education. Education is the starting point, and we keep on repeating this, but it starts with self-education. It starts with understanding in which way we have to discipline ourselves, to master ourselves. It has to do with empathy, meaning what I'm doing with myself, I should understand that I have to give it to people around me. Empathy, compassion that we are talking about, forgiveness, it's important. And we should never start or try speaking about peace without connecting peace with justice, dignity, and freedom. No. Think about it. Think about it. That's good. You see, it takes effort. Okay. And it also takes courage. It's not easy to sit down and to speak about peace and love, that's fine. But if you are serious about peace, sometimes you have to stand up and to speak the truth and to be ready for it. It takes courage as well as to be dignified, and we belong to our principles. This is what I found in all our traditions. When I went and I spent weeks in Dar es Salaam with the Dalai Lama, when I went to meet with priests in South America and Latin America, when I went to India, when I went with people who are from the traditional African countries with Hindus, what I saw is people who are serious with peace, and they are disciplined. They are disciplined with themselves. And we have it in the Quran, even when you fast, for example. When you fast, and what we have in the Quran coming from the Islamic tradition is كُتِبَ عَلَيْكُمُ الصِّيَامُ كَمَا كُتِبَ عَلَى الَّذِينَ مِنْ قَبْلِكُمْ. To fast is prescribed to you as it was prescribed to the religions before you. All the religions. And you can't find any spirituality where this is not central. It's important. You fast, you master yourself to get this inner peace, this new relationship with time and space and humanity. That the spiritual dimension here starts with ourselves, this self-critical, self-mastering process that we have to go through in order to understand that. And this is why I don't want to talk about peace and to celebrate peace in an emotional elevation which has no spiritual light, spiritual wisdom, spiritual commitment, and intellectual understanding. Now, when we speak about hate and when we speak about rejection and racism and war, we have also to think about the reasons. And when it comes to humanity, all our religions, and this is why I'm saying, I will never say, for example, Islam is a religion of peace, or Christianity is a religion of peace, or Judaism is a religion of peace, or Buddhism or Hinduism are spirituality of peace. They are all calling for peace, asking every one of us, now this is the way. Struggle, strive to get it. Out of dignity, out of freedom, out of equality, out of dignity, out of forgiveness, out of compassion, out of justice. It's a struggle. We struggle for peace, and this is the very essence of what we have in the Islamic tradition, while we have so many people who are not using it the right way. So when it comes to the reasons, we have hate, of course, we have conflict, and we have war. But we have to ask ourselves from where it comes. And there is something here which is essential. And every one of us in this room, we have to be self-critical with your own mind, your own heart. Dogmatism and lack of humility is the starting point of everything. Dogmatism, I'm right, so you are wrong. And this dimension with this lack of humility, which is arrogance. It has also to do with hate, and when we speak about this, it's racism. And even with racism, we have to be very cautious, because we have racism coming out of fear, because the people don't know. I'm saying to my fellow Muslims, if I was not a Muslim, when I see what I see, when I watch the TV, when I listen to what is said about Islam, I would be scared. Because it's scary. So the media coverage is making it something which is the only presence of the Muslims is a problem. So we have here also to differentiate between racism that sometimes is coming out of fear, sometimes is coming out of essentialization. I saw somebody, I have an anecdote about one Muslim, about one Jew, about one Buddhist, and I essentialize. You are all the same. So also this, it's important here. And then, of course, we have populism. And populism is based, and we have everything. We have populism within religion, and we have populism within our democratic societies. And it's 4 features. The first one is emotional politics. You know, these emotions that can drive you to be with peace this evening and with nothing tomorrow morning. So here we have to be very clear that today our democracies are in danger of emotional politics. Our democracy and what we have is this binary vision that you have within your society today, within all our societies, in the West, in the South, everywhere we are all having this us versus them. And we also are now nurturing a sense of victimhood. We are the victims of these people who are colonizing us. We are the victims of people who don't like us. Victimhood, it's a problem. So it means that we are no longer the subjects of our history, but we are the object of their perceptions. So that's a danger. And then populism is simplistic answers to complex questions and problems. So because we have unemployment, because we have insecurity, because we have trouble, it's them. So this is where we have to deal with this. And it could be, by the way, something that we find within our religious communities. It's not only by far-right parties. The problem of our societies is that what yesterday was said by far-right parties, now it's normalized in the public arena. Now we are able to say it, and we can say it. I would say something very clearly as well, that if we are serious with peace, no one in this room should put any kind of hierarchy between races. No hierarchy. There is no difference between being against the Latinos, the black people, the Muslims, the Jews, or whoever. Black, white, rich and poor, the starting point of us belonging to our principles, no hierarchy when it comes to racism. And what we are seeing now in our TV screens is as if the life of some people has less value than the life of others. So we are not reacting the same. And this is what I'm saying. The life of the people in Africa, the life of the refugees now in the Mediterranean Sea, the life of the migrants, the life of the Palestinians, the life of the Israeli, the life of everybody, it's exactly the same. And the first one, look, I'm becoming emotional, but don't be. So the life of everyone should here be at the same, and we have to understand no hierarchy with the life of the people. We are normalizing in our daily life that when people from our countries are killed, that's a great thing, and so many people in Africa, day in, day out. While we are talking now in Iraq, in Syria, in Africa, in Burma, we have to take a stand by saying this is unacceptable. You touch one life, you touch humanity. So this is also an important point, and as I have to conclude, and I promise to try to be a true Swiss citizen and not an African in the way we deal with time. Now I can say it, I am an African. Take it as something which is not a racist statement, it's a joke. So I would say that when it comes to this, we also have to deal, and please, while we are having the World Parliament, or the Parliament of the World Religions, don't come with religious ideals and avoid dealing with economic interest, geostrategic interest, power, consumerism, and that we also have to deal with transnational corporations that are spreading this kind. Because today, when you are nurturing controversies, it makes money. They are making money out of this fear that we have. So that's also important. We have to know who are the people who are nurturing this sense of alienation. They are making money out of our fear. They are making money out of weapons, and they come and say, be good citizens, keep quiet. Don't be too critical. So I would say here that this is our responsibility, to the point that some of our governments are spreading here and sometimes in the Middle East or in Africa, insecurity, and then they come with the goodwill by saying, you are scared, so we are going to monitor you. This is exactly what is happening here. In the United States of America, spreading fear and monitoring. For you to feel safe. In the name of security, we are dealing with policies against human rights. And I would say the last thing, we should value and we have to promote freedom of expression. But there is something which is the starting point of peace. You have rights, and we need to protect human rights. But we should remember something that was said by Gandhi at the very time of the Declaration of Human Rights. But we also have duties. Yes, you have the right to say whatever you want. But if you want us to live together, you are responsible of what you say. You have obligation, you have duties with your rights. It's not I say whatever, I insult, and I want afterward to get peace out of my insults. Insulting is not a dignified way to deal with our rights. And I would say, please, if I'm coming here to this parliament, it's not to talk to this crowd and to think that numbers matter. The most important thing is the personal commitment of every one of us at his or her personal level, within our family, within our community, to take peace seriously, meaning all the conditions of peace should be promoted, protected, and this is a struggle. You know what it is? Get it right. Get it right. This is a jihad. This is the right jihad. And I'm calling every one of you, jihad against poverty, jihad against racism, jihad against hate in the name of peace. This is what you get from the very essence of the Islamic message, if we understand it rightly. Thank you.
My name is Abdul Malik Mujahid. I am chair of the board of the Parliament of World Religions. How are you doing? Are you enjoying the parliament? Are you still with me? All right. Thank you. I'm here to honor someone, but I'll honor that person through a person who have honored us. Blau Carus is one of those business people whose heart is in interfaith. And he is among the founders of the Board of Trustees of the Parliament, Blau Carus.
Thank you, Malik. The Carus family is greatly honored to be able to award this Paul Carus Award for interreligious understanding for my grandfather, who gave a speech at the Parliament in 1893, entitled Science as a Religious Revelation, which we in the Carus family consider about 100 to 200 years ahead of his time, because he really appreciated the importance of preserving, taking care of the earth, the water, the air surrounding us. He considered the 1893 Parliament, he likened it to the second coming of Christ. He considered it so important that he did three things. First, he wanted to keep it going. He was disappointed that they couldn't go longer. And so he did three things. First of all, he became the secretary of the continuing Parliament because he saw the possibilities for it. But that was one of his only major failures of his lifetime, because he tried everything within his human reason to make it come about, but it never worked. So what did he do? As I said, he became secretary of the continuing Parliament, number one. Number two, in 1894, he wrote a book called The Gospel of Buddha to introduce Eastern thought into America and the West, which was translated in 10 languages and sold about 3 million copies. And thirdly, he wrote a book called The Dawn of a New Religious Era, which summarized the importance of the Parliament, considered it one of the most important events of the 19th century. So, when the Vedanta groups and other Eastern religions started talking about the founding of the celebration for 100 years of the 1893 Parliament in 1987-88, I participated representing the Carus family. We housed the executive director in our offices. We made the first grant and supported the Parliament during the periods of stress following that period. So Dirk Fikke, the executive director, asked me if we could celebrate Paul Carus, which we were happy to do. So here we are, and I want to thank a few people. First of all, I want to thank my wife, Mariana Carus, who helped me during this period and was the editor of Cricket Magazine, which has supported millions of children to have wonderful stories with a strong moral import. Secondly, I don't think you appreciate the enormous amount of work that Malik and Mary Nelson and the volunteers and the board of directors of the Parliament have done for this event. And Mariana and I are really appreciative and tremendously supportive. Let's give them a hand. Thank you. And now I would like to ask Malik to introduce the winner of the Paul Carus Award for Interreligious Understanding.
Don't worry about my backpack. It has nothing but peace in there. So it's not just my heart, but also my backpack is okay. You know, we thought interfaith movement takes many shapes. And we have been wondering, an award which has been instituted and has been part of our tradition, who it should go to. And we kept thinking, and one of the dimensions with interfaith movement has taken is the charter of compassion. And that prophet of compassion became Karen Armstrong. Not only she spoke passionately about compassion, but some people gave her a $100,000 award. And she said, this must be used to turn passion for compassion into a movement for compassion. And we thought that's the new dimension of interfaith movement. And for that reason, we selected for Paul Carus Award of this year, Karen Armstrong. Just a second. And I must say, it must be the Catholic soul of Karen Armstrong, as well as the struggles and prayers of my peace mentor, Kathy Kelly, who brought a Pope like Pope Francis. So here I present to you Karen Armstrong.
Thank you. This is a great, great honor and a very great surprise to me. And I thank you from the bottom of my heart for the kindness you've shown me today. And now I've got 10 minutes to give my speech, to summarize my book, which is 400 pages long. Now, I'm often being told that religion has been the cause of all the major wars in history. And it's a very odd remark, because we know that the 2 world wars were not fought for religion, but for secular nationalism. Military historians tell us that we never go to war for a single reason. There are always multiple interlocking factors involved and motivations involved, economic, territorial, and political, as well as ideological. And experts in terrorism tell us that whatever its ideology, terrorism is always inherently political. It's about grabbing power, changing power. And so I'm not saying that religion is not implicated in some of the violence that we've seen. But if we only concentrate on the religion and not take these other factors into consideration, we are not seeing our dangerous situation clearly. We all know, it's known that we often define terrorism as the killing of innocent civilians. And yet, we know, it's been documented, that throughout history, by far the biggest killer of civilians has been the state. In 1915 and to 1918, in the First World War, only 5% of the people who died in that war were civilians. In 1960s, in the Second World War, that figure went up to 66.5% of civilian death. And in our wars, in Afghanistan and Iraq, 90% of the people who have died have been civilians. And we never mention them in the West. We are right to honor the servicemen who come home, but we must also remember the men, women, children, and the elderly who have died simply because they were in the wrong place and in the wrong time. We should commemorate them too. Otherwise, we give the impression that we deem some lives to be more valuable than others. Now, one of our problems with religion and politics is that our notion of religion in the modern world is very peculiar. No other culture has anything like it. As an activity that is separate from all other activities, that has nothing to do with public life, that is centered on a supernatural God and a set of clearly defined beliefs and practices. Words in other languages that we translate as religion invariably have a much wider frame of reference. Deen in Arabic means a whole way of life. The rabbis who composed the Talmud would not have known about religion as something separate because their aim was to bring the whole of life into the ambit of the sacred. Religion in the pre-modern world permeated all activities. So thoroughly did the religion and politics co-inhere that trying to take religion out of politics would have been like trying to take the gin out of the cocktail. The two are inextricably combined. And when we look at great wars of religion like the Crusades, we have to remember the political element was as strong as the religious. The two were inseparable. Now, since we separated religion and politics, we've made a new religion, the religion of the nation. And if you think of the sacred as something for which you're prepared to die, it's now no longer appropriate or acceptable to die for your religion, but it's considered admirable to die for your country. Nationalism fills us with many of the emotions we associate with religion. It fills us with a sense of belonging to something greater than ourselves. But very early in the history of nationalism, Lord Acton a British historian, pointed out that the emphasis in the nation state on ethnicity, culture, and language would mean that people who did not fit the national profile would become extremely vulnerable. With chilling prescience, he said that some would even become enslaved or exterminated. Not long after that, we had the massacre of the Armenians by the Young Turks in the attempt to create a Turkic state, and we have the trauma and horror of the Holocaust. But throughout history, there have always been people who kept alive the ideal of compassion, who spoke out against the iniquities of the state. The prophets of Israel had no time for people who said their prayers nicely, but who ignored the plight of the poor and the oppressed. And the plight of the poor and the suffering are matters of sacred import. There is much that religion has to teach us. With our focus on the national, we are not realizing sufficiently that we are living in a global world where we're so interdependent, where our economies, our politics are so interdependent that we cannot live without one another. It's now time to show the world what religion can be. Love your enemies, said Jesus. He was not talking about emotion or sentiment. In the Hebrew word, love was a legal term used in international treaties when two kings would promise to love each other, that they would give to each other practical help and support and run to their aid, even going against their short-term interests. This is the kind of love we have to live with our enemies, to give to our enemies today. I am not in the business of compassion because I'm filled with peace and love and joy. I'm not. I am filled with dread because I'm convinced that unless now we implement the golden rule globally, so that we treat all peoples, whoever they are, as we would wish to be treated ourselves, the world is simply not going to be a viable place. We need now compassion, if it has an emotion, it's about discomfort. The Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, said, "Not one of you can be a believer if he can sleep when he knows that somebody is hungry." This is the kind of compassion we have to feel for the world. I'm often asked, what is a compassionate city, what will it be like? And the answer is, it is an uncomfortable city. We should nurture in ourselves a sense of profound discomfort that there are people in the world hungry, terrorized, humiliated, and we watch them coming, literally dying, in the effort to get into Europe. And when they come, they get off the boats and they say, "Now I am free." And they're met by guns, by abuse, and by ostracism. I sometimes think we live in the pleasure park that the Buddhist father incarcerated him in the West. We live lives of utter privilege, but suffering always breaks in. And we must allow, when we are inundated by images of suffering in a way that no previous generation has been, they're beamed into our homes on the television every night on the evening news. We should treat this as a spiritual opportunity. Let those images linger in our minds and hearts so that they disturb us and force us to take that suffering into our own selves. It will be the grain of sand that in the shell of the oyster that makes the pearl. That is what the world requires of religion today. And when you leave this conference, we must find innovative ways of incarnating those realities, those values that alone can save our world, our species, and our planet. Thank you very much.
I was told by the organizers that the ban on clapping has officially been lifted, so please let's give Dr. Armstrong another warm round of applause. Next we have Dr. Vishwanath. He is an eminent public intellectual, devoted teacher, and dedicated social worker. He is the founder, president, and director general of the Maharashtra Institute of Technology in Pune, India, in addition to being the founder and president of its World Peace Center of the Maharashtra Academy of Engineering and Educational Research. He is also the UNESCO Chair for Human Rights, Democracy, and Peace. Dr. Karad.
My dear brothers and sisters, the great scholars, thinkers, philosophers, and scientists gathered for this unique Parliament of World's Religions, which is a reminder to all of us of the very first Parliament, which was held on 11 September 1893. And particularly myself, it reminds me of the words of wisdom spoken by the great noble son of India, Swami Vivekananda, who had said that time, and when he said, union of science and religion / spirituality alone will help to bring harmony and peace to mankind. And he had given the very definition that religion is nothing but to perform one's duty. Duty towards the mother, the father, the family, the society, the nation, and the entire world. World as one family. Before I make some comments on the very subject which has been given to me, that whether the value-based universal education system can help to minimize the hate speech, the violence, the chaos, and the confusion prevailing in this world, in spite of the most mind-boggling developments in the field of science and technology, getting all the facilities and the luxurious things for enjoyment and possibly the pleasures of life. But friends, I sincerely feel that we have another component. It's not the human body alone, but there is a mind and the heart which needs to be really understood properly. The mind, matter, spirit, and consciousness are the four important words which we have to address ourselves when we have been trying to think about development of a human life. And when we say the development of a holistic society as a whole, we have to have a very important and a very prestigious component of life, that is education. I can only tell you, friends, that in the name of the same noble son again, that he had said that the education is nothing but a perfection already in a person, in a man. So many definitions have been given, but finally I feel on the present situation when we see all around that everything is available. Outer space, IT, computer, particle physics developments, but on the other side we have not been having a full satisfaction, and possibly there is a chaos, confusion, confrontations, the massacre, the bloodshed, and horrifying violence too. The issue is mainly in front of me, and the discussion which went on, what is the solution for this? I, for one, friends, I feel sincerely that there is a need to have a value-based universal education system. The moment I say universal, somebody may call that how can you dare to say universal? The basis is that every nation has a geography, its history, its culture, its traditions, but the time-tested values are common. The human values are common. And naturally, we have got to know exactly what way we have to proceed. And from that point of view, there is an urgent need. There was a time, friends, you remember it very well, that religion is very dominant. And Mr. Galileo, the greatest scientist, when he gave an equation or when he told the world that the sun is stationary and the earth revolves it, he was given a death punishment. Socrates himself, the great philosopher of the world, he was also given a poison for educating and possibly trying to speak some logical and with reasoning. But nowadays, it has gone to the other extreme. And I sincerely feel that when we understand the IT, computer, particle physics, whatever words you speak about, finally, the question is we should have an appropriate system of education, even though I don't say that the present system is wrong. But there is some deficiency which has been observed all over the world. And we know that the outer space, the various computer, IT, internet, everything we have been trying to speak, but there is no full satisfaction, and there is some deficiency observed because the spiritual component or the religious component or about the religion itself, there is no inclusion all over the world. The global society as a whole, all the vice chancellors, the university heads and everybody, we have got to seriously think on these issues that we must have a component of appropriate component of science and appropriate component of spirituality too. Not to misunderstand about the spiritual component, because that ultimately helps to develop the positive mindset. The issue is not to have a destructive mind or a negative mind, but how to develop the positive mindset, and possibly the best solution would be that you should have a certain component of meditation and your own faith, whatever belief you have. But remember, friends, that at least we must have to have a complete component of at least some component of spirituality and some component of science part of it, engineering part of it, or IT computer part of it. And we will have to design a new system of education, and from that point of view, if you can really try to make the mind a positive mindset, the hate speech or the spiteful speeches, which is possibly ultimately coming out from the mob tendency. When there is a mob tendency, possibly the chaos and confusion becomes more horrifying. And presently, we can never think of the worst of the worst fear complex which is being created. And the world over, there is a big problem. We are not at peace at all. Our World Peace Center, MIT, Pune, India, who is a firm believer of the great philosopher sent of India, Sant Jnaneshwara, at the age of 16, he said, this spiritual component or the religious component is nothing but to understand the ultimate reality, the ultimate truth. You may call Ram or Rahim or Jesus or Buddha, whatever name you give. My name is Vishwanath. The question is, this name is given by my parents. The issue is, what is that invisible force or the energy which needs to be appropriately understood and included in the education system itself? That is my personal feeling, friends. And I sincerely feel that world over we have to think again and finally settle a new education system, which I call it as a value-based universal education system, which may be some solution to minimize the chaos, confusion, bloodshed, massacre, terrorism, and violence, horrifying violence all over the world. Why it is happening, what is the reason behind, we can think and you can certainly answer. You can know it very well because you are all learned people, scholarly people, the men of education, men of academics. And I think I have a sincere feeling that, as said by the Vivekananda himself in 1893, that time has come. And we have to think and revive ourselves in an appropriate manner. I don't say everything is wrong. I personally, I'm a professor of engineering. I do understand it. And finally, I would say and conclude with a few words. This is Atharva Veda quotation, not with a pride, because I'm an Indian. But let me tell you, friends, there is a confusion again that all the religious scriptures are something like an ignorant part of it. There is some confusion about the spiritual component. And let me tell you, friends, all the religious scriptures themselves are life-guiding scriptures. They are not only meant for either the Islam, the Quran, the Bible, the Gita, the Guru Granth Sahib, whatever names you take up the different books. You will find that they are nothing but the life-guiding scriptures. How to live and how let others live. How to help and how to help the other people. That has been the solution. Finally, I would like to tell you, friends, and give a small quotation and conclude my speech. This quotation is from an Atharva Veda. There are two components. One is the ritualistic component and one is the scientific component. It says, we are the birds of the same nest. We may wear different skins. We may speak different tongues. We may believe in different religions. We may belong to different cultures. Yet we share the same home, the Mother Earth. Born on the same planet, covered by the same skies, gazing at the same stars, breathing the same air. We must learn to progress together or miserably perish together. For a person can live individually, but can only survive collectively is the final destiny for the whole of human race. It doesn't speak of any particular religion or any particular caste. Friends, I would like to once again earnestly appeal to you that there is a need to have some modification, and without misunderstanding, without calculating anything else, we need to have a scientific component, appropriate component of science, and appropriate component of spirituality or the religion, which is the need of the hour, and possibly that system of education may help to a certain extent to minimize the chaos, confusion, bloodshed, and violence in the world. That's my personal feeling. Thank you so much, friends.
Thank you. Next we have Mairead Maguire. Mairead was 32, yes, round of applause. She was 32 years old when she, along with Betty Williams, was awarded the Nobel Peace Prize for her work towards a peaceful resolution to the violent conflict in Northern Ireland. For 4 decades, she has advocated courageously for dialogue, reconciliation, and peace. In 2006, she co-founded the Nobel Women's Initiative, an organization dedicated to supporting women's groups around the world in campaigning for justice, peace, and equality. As I was familiarizing myself with Mairead's story, it was impossible not to be awed at her perseverance in the face of such personal tragedy. In 1976, she lost a niece and 2 nephews, ages 8, 2, and 6 weeks. To be beset by such overwhelming loss and respond in the way she did made me at once emotional and inspired. Please help me in welcoming Ms. Mairead Maguire.
Good evening, brothers and sisters. It's a great joy for me to be here with you this evening and to be given the honor of being able to speak to you. So I thank the organizers for their invitation. And what a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful occasion for us to be here. We come here as people from all different religions and none, from all different beliefs, and we come from all parts of the world, and we represent millions and millions of the human family who want peace. You know, peace is not a big thing to ask for. We have a human right to peace. And everyone in their hearts, what do people want around the world? They want peace for themselves, for their families, for their communities. They want enough to eat. They want a decent home. They want human security. They want to be able to freely speak how they feel and what they believe in. They want to be able to listen carefully to what others feel and what they believe in. Because when we listen, and not only with our ears but with our heart, when we listen to each other, we realize that, oh yes, of course we're different. We have different ideologies. We have many different things. But we also realize that we are human beings, that we have our common humanity, that we are capable of loving, that no matter what people do and how wrong they get it and how misguided they get it, that in their hearts they are good. You know, we are going down the wrong road if we continue on the road of punishment and cruelty and war against terrorists. Who are these terrorists that we are fighting war against? September the 11th was a great tragedy. We all remember where we were when we heard the news. And I remember when I heard about September the 11th, and I met my husband on the road outside, and I said to him, where are the children? Where are our children? Because we all felt on September the 11th for the people of America and other countries who had lost someone in that most cruel of fashion. But what we also hoped for would be a sense of vision that somehow we didn't need to go down this road of retaliation and cruelty and killing. We didn't need to go that way. We needed a different way to approach it. You know, come September the 11th, had we had people with wisdom in responsible places, they would have chosen to say that what happened on September the 11th was a criminal act. And of course, people could be taken to task for criminal acts, but they would not have gone down the road of revenge, cruelty, war, and murder. We are at the turning point in our history, and what we choose will be important for the future of our children and whether we survive as a human family. That's how serious it is now today. The way politics are going, the way wars are increasing, the way militarism is being used to teach people how to kill their brothers and sisters and go out and with nuclear weapons, which can be used and may well be used because they've been used by America before and they could be used again. Let's not fool ourselves. We need to begin to think in a whole new way. And I'm not just talking about tinkering with a few programs and bringing in a few small administrative charges, I am thinking that we have got to change our mindsets, our whole way of thinking, our whole way of acting as men and women in a civilized world. You know, we have got to find our humanity. We have got to resurrect our values. We have got to talk about morality. We have got to bring ethics into our personal and our political lives. In other words, we've got to find our souls again. This is where the faith traditions have an important responsibility. Are you up to this responsibility? As faith traditions, have you got your foundations right? Because you see, we can't just all say it's all about the political leaders and their bad foreign policies. We have got to say, where am I in this? Am I leading and living out of love? And that love means loving everyone, being forgiven, having no enemies, but understanding where people are coming from when they take a gun or a bomb and go out and use it. Where are they coming from? Let's ask the real questions, because it's only when we get to the root of what the violence is and where it's coming from, and we face on the root causes and begin to tackle them, will we have any hope whatsoever of beginning to get out of this mess that we are all in. The root causes of violence. You know, the enemy is poverty. The enemy is injustice. The enemy is cruelty. The enemy is demonizing another religion or other different ethnic groups. The enemy is not out there, it is also in there, in our own prejudices. I think sometimes we confuse life so much that we have got to demonize somebody. And my God, aren't we good at it? Look at how we demonized the leader of Iraq, the leader of Libya. Look at what we're now doing in Syria. Look at what we've done in Afghanistan. These were all man-made, woman-made conflicts that did not need to happen. I was in Iraq before the war, and we spoke to the Iraqi administration. They told us we've no nuclear weapons, we want dialogue. We want dialogue with America. Did they get it? No, they got bombs. I was in Syria twice in the last couple of years. Do you know what's happening in Syria? What we discovered in Syria, thousands and thousands of foreign fighters paid for, trained, and sent in by Saudi Arabia, Qatar, America, Britain, the UK, trained foreign fighters in Syria to bring down a Syrian government. Do you read that in your press? No, you don't, because the Western media don't tell us the truth. And as civilized people concerned about our brothers and sisters, no matter where they live, because they are our brothers and sisters, we demand of the media, the corporate Western media, to tell us the truth so that we can make up our own minds what to do and what not to do. Western foreign policies have created a world that is very dangerous for any of us to be travelling about in. I appeal to the American administration, being here in America, and I have American roots. I appeal to the American administration. Turn away from the path you're on of war and militarism and weaponry, and join the human family in beginning to deal with the real enemies of poverty and the environmental crises and nuclear weapons that we have to get rid of. Turn away from the path you're on and give us all a chance for peace. But I say to the churches and to the faith traditions, you can do great things, because it will be a spiritual and a political movement that will change the world. It will be the head and the heart that will change the world. And the religious traditions have a tremendous responsibility, because you can do great good, but only if you are true to your founders who taught non-violence, peace, and non-killing. Reject totally. Throw away your theologies that bless just wars. I, as a Christian, reject totally the just war theory, because in the words of Father John L. Mackenzie, a brilliant American theologian, the just war theology is a phony piece of morality. You know, poor old Augustine, he once wrote, "Everything I have written is so much straw." Augustine, your just war theology, you got it wrong, brother. We want a theology more in keeping with the spirit of love, forgiveness, reconciliation. Muhammad, Jesus, the great prophets who taught love. Love one another as I have loved you. And do not kill. Thank you.
Thank you for that powerful message. All peoples want peace. Next up, we have Dr. Robert Pape. Dr. Pape is professor of political science at the University of Chicago and a distinguished scholar of national security affairs. He is a leading expert in the area of suicide terrorism, drawing attention to the fact that over 90% of suicide terrorist attacks are linked to foreign military occupations throughout the world. You wouldn't know that watching the news. Please help me in welcoming Dr. Pape.
Thank you very much. It's great to be here. For more than a decade, the United States and other countries around the world have been waging a so-called war on terror. From almost every aspect, this war has been an unmitigated disaster. And for many in the United States and other countries, the result has been a feeling that they are viewed as a potential enemy simply because of their faith. It is time, past time, to call attention to the problems and hardships that blaming terrorism on Islam has caused. We can think of the thousands and thousands in our country and in the West pulled out for random screenings at airports in front of their families, or profiled at traffic stops, or accosted on the street. It is important to acknowledge the social costs and curtailed civil liberties these misguided policies have caused. We as a society and as a world know better. We can do better. It is incumbent upon us to strive toward, not run away, rigorous analysis, to discover the true face of terrorism instead of depending on lazy stereotypes, and finally, to educate all around us in order to exit this vicious cycle of harming innocents while doing nothing to stop real terrorism. Thank you. I am speaking of a return to justice in our dealing with the Muslim world. In order to achieve that justice, we need more knowledge. To do so, we need to ask hard questions and examine the answers honestly, even if it seems counterintuitive. There hangs above this whole debate one question. Could the war on terror actually be creating more terrorists? Since 9/11, the United States has invaded and directly occupied two Muslim countries, Iraq and Afghanistan, indirectly occupied a third, Pakistan, and sent thousands of special forces around the world to hunt out terrorists. Has this made us any safer? That is a question that we know the answer to, but we need facts, hard facts, not just for us, so that we can tell and persuade others. We and others can no longer say we don't have time to find out the facts. Even during the Bush era, the American Secretary of Defense, Donald Rumsfeld, once asked the question, are we producing more terrorists than we're killing? That question needs to be answered with hard data. And the research I've been conducting is hard data right on that topic. And thank you. That research, it may come as a surprise to hear, has been funded by the U.S. Department of Defense, the Pentagon, and actually has some adherents I'll tell you about in just a moment. It's summarized in my books. It's summarized online for free. You don't have to pay to get the basic facts. But let me tell you what the study has been about. It's been about suicide terrorism, the form of terrorism that's the most deadly and the most associated with Islam in the public's mind. And I've looked at every suicide attack over the last 30 years. Here's the reality. In 2000, the year before 9/11, there were 20 suicide attacks around the world. One was anti-American against the coal in Yemen. In 2009, there were 300 suicide attacks around the world, over 250 anti-American inspired. Our policies are not stopping terror. We're doing more to scare Americans and good Muslims in the West than the terrorists. And these policies created ISIS, the problem that we have. It is clear we need to move beyond the war on terror. And tonight, I would like to ask you to join a growing movement to do just that. To enable this move, it is crucial to change the public debate away from the false reality that Islam is causing terrorism. That can be done with new knowledge, new facts that paint a fundamentally different picture, and if you help, you can help disseminate this knowledge. Shortly after 9/11, I compiled a database of roughly 350 suicide attacks. What I found was stunning. Half of those attacks were not associated with Islamic fundamentalism. The world leader during that period, 25 years, the Tamil Tigers in Sri Lanka, weren't even Muslims. They were Hindus. They were secular. They were anti-religious. What I found was that it's not religion driving suicide attack, any religion. What I found is that over 95% of suicide attacks are in direct response to a military occupation. And I don't mean occupation in some trivial sense. Let me give you one example. Before the Israeli invasion of Lebanon in June of 1982, Hezbollah did not exist. 1 month later, after 78,000 Israeli combat soldiers invaded and occupied the country, Hezbollah was born, and suicide attacks began shortly thereafter. Those attacks continued for nearly 20 years until Israel military troops left the country. And from the time they left until the most recent war with Syria, no suicide attacks by Hezbollah on Israel. The rise and that fantastic decline of suicide attacks shows a strong relationship with suicide terrorism and occupation. So it should come as no surprise in 2003, when the Americans occupied Iraq, we produced the largest suicide campaign in history. Then American troops left, and what did we leave behind? A government we installed to even more occupy the Sunni community. And we created ISIS and left behind the government we installed to further motivate ISIS. This is not winning the war on terror. As you know, many today in the United States and around the world, on the right and the left, are calling for more combat troops in Muslim countries. They need to hear this message. They need to hear these facts. And here's why. For those who turn to terrorism, occupation is not just a grievance, like many old grievances. It's a deep moral harm. Experiencing this occupation allows terrorist leaders to reframe murder and suicide as justified acts of self-defense. And if that occupation continues or grows, you're not changing that outcome. We are not effectively addressing this reality. We are not even getting accurate pictures of suicide attackers. I've studied 462 suicide attackers, the largest demographic profile. They are not poor, uneducated, unemployed. They are more educated than their surrounding community. Working class, middle class. They are teachers, ambulance drivers, security guards, the kind of people who you would think would care about their communities and fight for self-defense. Spreading this wealth of new information is precisely what could allow us to turn away from the harmful policies that have caused more terrorism than it has stopped, and to build new policies that would uproot terrorism instead of planting new seeds for more. For those who think progress can't be made, it's important to know that our efforts are making headway. Our voices are being heard. One of the biggest advocates of these policies sits in the Oval Office. He is turning the tide, but we still have a long way to go. To truly move the world beyond the war on terror, we need your help. What's necessary is a true culture of change to move public discussion away from harmful assumptions to facts, to balance out the thousands of mistaken public discussions about why Islam causes terrorism with real facts about terrorism, and not to be afraid of talking about terrorism. You are all influential, academic, political, secular leaders in your community. You are also vibrant members of your community. I ask you here tonight to commit to spreading the truth and these facts about what caused terrorism to your colleagues, to your congregants, to your friends, and to your families. If each of you would simply talk to 3 people and tell them about these facts, 3 people, and ask those 3 people to talk to 3 people, and ask those 3 people to talk to 3 people, the 10,000 of you, in short order, could fundamentally change the world. And it's changing the public that we need to do. And you are the engine of that change. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Pape. It gives me warm fuzzies to introduce our next speaker, Jane Goodall. I was going to ask if anyone's heard of her, but you beat me to it. Jane Goodall is a primatologist, anthropologist, and UN messenger of peace. In 1960, at the age of 26, she set out from her native England to modern-day Tanzania to study chimpanzees and one chimpanzee family in particular for the next 55 years. Today, she is the world's leading expert on them. Through her organization, the Jane Goodall Institute and others, she is an outspoken conservation and animal welfare activist. Please hoot, holler, and clap for Jane Goodall.
Well, what an exciting gathering to be standing in front of. And it's getting late, but I think I'm going to start off by introducing the voice of one of the beings that I've spent so much of my life getting to know, and that's the chimpanzee. So, this is me. This is Jane, in chimpanzee language. There's a reason for my starting that way, which I'll come back to later. But I want to go back to the very beginning, and I want to acknowledge the tremendously important role that my mother played on my life. She was the most amazingly understanding and supportive person. She supported my passionate love of all animals, which began as soon as I could open my eyes, apparently. But she did more than that. When I was 10 years old, going back 70 years in the UK, a little girl dreaming of going to Africa, living with animals, and writing books was unheard of. And everybody laughed at me, but she didn't. And her message was, if you really want this, you're going to have to work very hard, take advantage of opportunity, and never give up. She did something else for me. We grew up in a Christian family. My grandfather was a congregational minister. But I remember her very well saying, you know, you might have been born in Egypt, or you might have been born in Japan, or perhaps some other part of the world. And maybe instead of calling God God, you would call God Allah. And she gave a list of other names, but she said, it has to be one God. So whatever faith we grow up in, it's all the same God, and we're all united in worshipping that God. The next thing she did for me in my journey was after World War II, and that was a shock. I remember so well the devastation, the pictures of the Holocaust when those camps were opened up, made a deep impression on me. And I remember so clearly too the shocking, shocking pictures of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. And during the war, you know, the Germans in the UK, the sound of a German voice sent a chill to us. And so what did my mother do after the war? She found a family in Germany and sent me off to stay with them so that I would learn it wasn't Germans who fought the war. It was just that we fought the war for whatever reasons we fought it, and the Germans were people just like us. Then I had this amazing opportunity of going and living with and learning about not just any animal, but the one most like us biologically and behaviorally. So many of our behavior patterns are the same. So much of our biology is the same. And it was a shock to me to find that, like us, chimpanzees have a dark side to their nature, and they're capable of violence and even a kind of primitive war. But at the same time, like us, they have qualities of love, compassion, and true altruism. It was very clear after I'd been among them for a couple of years that there wasn't a sharp line dividing us from them. And yet when I went to Cambridge University to do a PhD, I had no degree at all at the time. I hadn't been to college. And the professors told me I'd done everything wrong. The chimpanzees shouldn't have names but numbers. That was scientific. And I couldn't talk about them having personalities, minds capable of problem solving, and certainly not emotions, because those were unique to us. And fortunately, although I was very naive scientifically, I had a wonderful teacher when I was a child. That was my dog, Rusty. He absolutely taught me the professors were wrong, and I don't care what animal you share your life with. You share your life with a dog, a cat, a pig, a cow, I don't care what it is, you know the professors were wrong. And I think it was the chimpanzees that have helped to open the dark box in which science was operating. And now there's a whole flurry of interest in the intellect of birds, which originally scientists said their brains structured differently, they're not capable of intellectual performance as well. They are. And the latest interest is in the intelligence of the octopus. And if you haven't seen this, after this, Google octopus with coconut shell. You will be amazed and you will laugh, so please do it. So we are part of the animal kingdom, not separated from it, as once was thought. It's a difference of degree and not, as I was told, a difference of kind. And yet, there's a difference. We all know there's a difference. We wouldn't be sitting here in a room like this if there wasn't a difference. We wouldn't have a gathering like this if there wasn't a difference. And I think the difference began when humans, for some reason or other, started to develop a spoken language. Like, could be a sign language, but a language using symbolism using words so that I could describe for you things far away, and if I use words correctly, you would get a picture. And now we use the words in writing, we use them now electronically. And I believe that this ability to talk about the past, to plan the distant future, and above all to have discussions so that we can bring together people from different disciplines to try and solve a problem, that has led to this explosive development of our intellect. So here's the multi-million-dollar question. If, and I think we must agree, we're the most intellectual creature that's ever walked the surface of the planet, how come we're destroying our only home? It's not just the war and the violence and the weapons of mass destruction that we've been talking so much about. Those, yes. But in addition, there's the war that we're wreaking on Mother Earth. And this is really very serious. If you care, as I do, about the wild places, the fact that the forests are going and the freshwater supplies are shrinking, and there's the terrible pollution of air, water, and land. There are the chemicals that we use in industry, in agriculture, and also in our own homes. And with these, we are poisoning the planet. There's now facing us the disaster of climate change. No longer is this a myth that some people can deny. Very few people deny it today because we see what's happening. We see temperatures rising. We see the ice melting. We see tremendous impact on biodiversity around the planet. So how is this possible? People have been talking about this up on this platform tonight. There seems to be a disconnect between this clever brain and the human heart, love and compassion. And the brain without the heart can be very, very dangerous. The brain without the heart can release nuclear weapons that will destroy a whole area of a country and release poisons into the atmosphere that will damage people for years and years to come. No wonder, as I was traveling the world, and I do travel 300 days a year, no wonder I was meeting many young people, thoughtful young people, who were thinking about the problems in the world around them, environmental and social. And they seemed not to have much hope for the future, many of them. And I'm talking about young people in America, in Europe, in Asia, in Africa. And when I began talking to them, they all said more or less the same thing. And these young people, mostly they were just apathetic. They didn't really care much about anything. But some of them were deeply depressed, even clinically depressed, and some were angry, even violent. And they said to me, we feel this way because you've compromised our future, and there's nothing we can do about it. Every day I see a small child, and I look at that child, and I think how we've harmed this planet since I was that age. I feel ashamed of my species. And that's why I began this movement for young people, Roots and Shoots, that's now in 140 countries around the world. And it's basically acknowledging and helping young people understand that each and every one of us makes a difference each and every day, that each one of us has a role to play, that each one of us has a life that matters. And I will never forget talking to a group of untouchable children in Nepal, forced to work in the brick mines and the coal mines, or to make bricks and go in the coal mines, and telling them about this fact that they matter, their lives matter. And some of the older ones were crying. They said, nobody's ever told us we mattered before. So Roots and Shoots is about empowering young people, first of all, to learn about the problems around them, and secondly, to discuss those problems and find out if they feel there's something they can do about those problems, and finally to empower them to take action and listen to their voices. the young people are those who are inheriting the mess that we've made. And when I think back to my childhood and my wise mother and the lessons I learned during World War II, we need to start with young children. Roots and Shoots encourages every single group, and there are about 100 or 150,000 groups around the world, and a group can be the whole school or just a small family group. And there are children involved in preschool and a very strong number in university, and even some adults are forming groups of Roots and Shoots today. And not only do we have the number of active groups now, but we have all the young people who've been going through that program since it began in 1991, who tell me it changed the way they think. We don't tell them what to do. How could we? Because the problems are different for young people growing up in different countries and different situations. They choose what they want to do. We encourage them, we help them, we provide some ideas if they don't have any, and some children have been so suppressed that they can't really think for themselves. But what we're creating is a family of young people who understand that, yes, we need money to live, but what's gone wrong, particularly in the Western world and some of the communities throughout the world, is that money has become a religion. And people are not just needing money to live, they're living for money. And it's okay to live for money if that money is going to be used to put the world to rights. It's not okay to live for money to get another villa, to get another big car, to get, yes. So these Roots and Shoots young people are what give me the most hope. We have one amazing young leader in Burundi. Burundi, which was really getting over their terrible genocide, which is sadly seeming to start up again. He was forced to be a child soldier. And he got through his pain and his trauma by working with Roots and Shoots to help the young people in his country. And he's carried on, even with the killings that are going on in Burundi today, almost every week. He carries on, he works with the teachers, he gives the young people hope. So this is what gives me the most hope, the young people. So everywhere I go in the world, these crazy 300 days of travel, there are young people with shining eyes wanting to tell Dr. Jane what they've been doing, what they plan to do to make this a better world, how they've been helping people, how they've been helping other animals, how they've been helping the environment. Why did the UN make me a messenger of peace? What was that for? That was because one of the threads, the philosophies running right throughout Roots and Shoots, which I didn't even think about, but it grew out of the program. It grew out of the empowerment of youth and listening to their voices. And that was a thread of, we need to learn to live in peace and harmony with each other. Peace and harmony between nations, between cultures, between religions. In Tanzania, we worked in the Muslim schools as well as the Christian schools. They worked together on projects. They understood how closely they are the same. And so the Roots and Shoots group give me hope. The human brain gives me hope. After all, yes, not only have we created these weapons of mass destruction and chemical warfare, we've also created so much amazing, clean, green energy. If we just had governments subsidize that rather than the oil and gas industry. My next reason for hope is the resilience of nature. You must all know places that once were beautiful that we have desecrated, and how give them time and perhaps some help. Once again, they can become beautiful. I've seen areas that were totally devastated come back. All around Gombe National Park, where the chimps are, when I flew over in 1991, the hills that had been thick forest were bare, because more people were living there than the land could support, too poor to buy food from elsewhere. And it was then obvious to me, we can't save nature, we can't save animals, unless we also improve the lives of people living in poverty. And it's worked. They become our partners. The trees have come back. And my next reason for hope is the indomitable human spirit, the people who tackle the impossible and won't give up. And Nelson Mandela is the example that comes to mind, because he came out of 17 years of hard physical labor with the amazing capacity of forgiveness, and so was able to lead his nation out of the evil regime of apartheid. Without a bloodbath. And finally, and this is something which came to me only recently, this time last year, I took part in the climate march in New York, and the organizers thought that perhaps there'd be 80,000 people. In fact, there were nearly 400,000, and would have been more, but the police had to stop more people coming because it was dangerous. And why did that happen? I watched, I saw what happened. Everybody all around me, they had their cell phones and their iPads and their tablets, and they were messaging and tweeting and twittering and calling people on their cell phone. And they were saying, you know, come and join us. It's a beautiful day. There's a whole lot of film stars over there. And I even heard one young girl say, Jane Goodall's here. Yes. So that was going on in major cities around the world, the same sort of thing. It was the largest gathering of human beings gathered around an issue in the history of mankind. And that's what we can do if we join hands and join hearts, work with hand and heart together. That's why the faith communities are so important. I hope some of you will help me to get Roots and Shoots into your communities, because as one young man said to me, who helped me start it in the 90s, he said, Jane, one of the best things about Roots and Shoots is I know anywhere I go in the world, even if I don't know anybody, if there's a group of Roots and Shoots, I've found my family. We are growing a family of young people who understand that underneath the color of our skin, the languages we speak, we're all the same. We have the same heart that beats. And I believe that it's the young people who are going to help to make that link between head and heart that will lead to a world of peace and harmony. Thank you.
Yes, that just happened. Rejoining us now to share some remarks, please welcome back to the stage His Holiness Dr. Vasanth Vijayji Maharaj.
My heartful peace wishes and a very pleasant good evening to one and all. Distinguished guests and my dear brothers and sisters, I am indeed delighted to participate in this World Parliament of Religions and share my thoughts on various subjects. When a baby is born, he is filled with innocence and love. As he grows, he starts developing hatredness, violence, and enmity due to lack of understanding between the right and the wrong. He forgets the deadly influence that it causes to him and to his family and society where he lives, and gradually he starts to harm the whole universe by his thoughts and deeds. Is it possible to harm the whole universe by a single individual? Is it possible? Yes, it is proved. Every single human being, when he or she quarrels and then forgets, but in doing so, they transmit their respective vibrations of anger into the universe, which travels into the cosmic layer and gets gathered, and when it returns back to the earth, it can create a dangerous terrorist. Even human being is responsible, every human being is responsible in the creation of violence in this universe. Every single word that we release as a reaction in this universe, every single step we walk has a reaction in this universe, every single action has a reaction in this universe. Now the choice is ours. Do we want to walk towards peace or war? Loudly. If really we want peace, then first we need to bring change in our thoughts and actions. We should try to increase our tolerance, love, and compassion towards our family, neighbors, and society. As hatredness is the mother of violence, violence is the mother of war, and war is the mother of destruction. In the same way, tolerance is the mother of love, love is the mother of compassion, and the compassion is the mother of universal peace. So, from today, instead of using guns, let's use lovable words. Instead of quarrels, let's start peace talks. Instead of sending soldiers, let's send teacher of peace. Instead of assembling war parliaments, let's assemble parliament of world religions, by which we can surely promote peace, and more peace. I remember a meaningful story from my religion which I belong. A man goes to Lord Mahavira, the 24th Tirthankara of Jainism, and asks Mahavira, I want happiness. Mahavira tells him, remove the word I from your sentence, because I symbolizes ego. Until ego is there, you can't get happiness. After removing I, what is remaining? Can you all say? Want happiness. Now Mahavira tells him to remove the word want, because want symbolizes desire, and desire is the root cause of unhappiness. Now Mahavira asks man, what is left when we remove I and want from the sentence? Can anyone sitting here tell me what is left? Yes. By this, we can learn when I and want is removed from our lives, there is only one thing left in our lives, that is wholesome happiness. Am I all right? I'm right. Tell me, when we hate anybody, then do we treat them as our enemy or not? But when our leg or any body part becomes dirty, do we clean them or cut them off? If we start to think every human being as the part of our lives, we never cut them off. By this, we can stop war, violence, and hatred speech. We are one family of citizens, no matter we stand divided on the world map or divided by international waters. We are one universe, and we should make sure we live and create happiness and peace for one and all. Let's sow the seeds of peace flowers in today's violent valley and connect the whole world with the beds of love, hope, faith, and selflessness and harmony. To conclude, I would only say one thing: arise, awake, and stop not till the goal is reached. To make this whole planet a peaceful land for one and all to live and breathe in happiness and harmony. In our ancient Indian language, Sanskrit, we have 108 similar words to describe love. In Islam, we have 99 similar words to describe God. In Japanese, we have 14 similar words to describe beauty. My dear friends and sisters, brothers, we have only one word in the whole world in the all different languages to describe peace. So, peace is the most precious chain that connects our life to eternity and God. So what we are waiting for? Let's make peace possible. Let's promote non-violence. Let's live and let live. Let's be compassionate to all. Finally, I would like to recite a prayer which is most ancient, and it is praying to Lord Shantinatha, the 16th Tirthankara, the universal God for peace. The prayer's meaning is, O Lord of peace, give peace in all hearts. Give peace in every house of this universe. May peace prevail in the hearts of every monk who works for peace. May peace prevail in every street. May peace prevail in every town. May peace prevail in every city. May peace prevail in every state. May peace prevail in every country. May peace prevail in every continent. And may peace prevail in whole